Captain Jake Morrison gripped the controls of his fighter ship as laser beams cut through the darkness around him. The battle had been going on for 3 hours and the human fleet was losing badly. Enemy ships filled the space between two moons like angry wasps defending their nest. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years, and they did not plan to let humans take even one small planet from them. Jake pulled his ship into a sharp turn to avoid a blast that would have torn his fighter in half. His hands were sweating inside his gloves, but he had been fighting these battles for 2 years now. The Earth Defense Corps had sent him and 50 other pilots to this system because reports said the aliens were weak here. The reports were wrong. The Zephyrians were never weak anywhere. Through his helmet radio, Jake heard other pilots calling for help. Lieutenant Dan Kelly was trying to escape 3 enemy fighters that were chasing him toward an asteroid field. Commander Lisa Park was running low on fuel and asking for permission to return to the main ship. Captain Rickstone had taken damage to his weapon systems and could only fly in circles, hoping not to get shot down. Jake looked at his tactical screen and saw the real problem. The enemy queen was out there somewhere controlling all their ships with her mind. Every Zephyrian vessel was connected to Queen Vexthara through some kind of biological link that humans still did not understand. She could see through the eyes of every pilot and gunner in her fleet. She could make their ships move faster and hit harder just by thinking about it. Fighting the Zephyrians was like fighting one giant creature with 1,000 arms instead of fighting many separate enemies. The Queen's flagship was easy to spot even in the chaos of battle. It was 3 times bigger than any human ship, and it glowed with a blue light that came from inside its living hull. The Zephyrians grew their ships instead of building them. Their vessels looked more like enormous sea creatures than the metal boxes that humans flew. Long tentacles hung from the flagship's sides, and Jake had seen those tentacles grab enemy ships and crush them like tin cans. Jake pushed his fighter toward the flagship even though he knew it was probably suicide. His mission orders were to gather information about enemy weak points, but so far he had learned that the Zephyrians did not seem to have any weak points. Their ships healed themselves when damaged. Their weapons never seemed to run out of power. Their pilots never got tired because the Queen's mind was controlling them all. As Jake got closer to the flagship, he could see Queen Vexthara through the transparent dome on top of her ship. She was tall and thin like a crystal statue that someone had carved from blue ice. Energy flowed around her body in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Her eyes glowed with the same blue light that powered her ships, and Jake felt like she was looking right at him even though he was just one tiny fighter among hundreds. Something strange happened next. Jake was lining up his weapons to take a shot at the flagship's bridge when Queen Vexthara suddenly stumbled. She grabbed the sides of her command throne and her glowing eyes flickered like a candle in the wind. The blue energy around her body started to fade, and for the first time in the battle she looked like she might be in trouble. Jake held his fire and watched as the Queen tried to stand up straight. Her crystalline face was twisted with pain or effort, and the tentacles on her flagship began to move in wild, jerky motions. Other Zephyrian ships started to slow down and drift as if their engines were losing power. Jake heard confused voices on the enemy radio frequencies as alien pilots asked their commanders what was happening. Then Queen Vexthara fell. She collapsed onto her throne, and the blue glow around her body went out completely. Every Zephyrian ship in the battle zone suddenly went dark. Their engines stopped working. Their weapons stopped firing. The massive flagship began to tumble slowly through space like a dead whale floating in the ocean. Jake watched enemy fighters crash into asteroids because their pilots could no longer control them. He saw the Queen's escort ships bump into each other as they drifted without power. In less than 2 minutes, the most powerful fleet in this part of the galaxy had become a collection of helpless metal shells floating in the void. The human fleet immediately started celebrating. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice came over the radio telling all pilots to regroup and prepare for search and rescue operations. Other captains were already talking about how this victory would change the war and give humanity its first real chance to push back against the Zephyrian Empire. but Jake was not celebrating. He kept his eyes on Queen Vexthara's motionless form and tried to understand what he had just seen. The Queen had not been hit by human weapons. No one had attacked her ship directly. She had simply fallen over for no reason that anyone could explain. More importantly, Jake remembered the look in her eyes during those last few seconds before she collapsed. Most humans thought aliens could not show emotions on their faces, but Jake had been studying Zephyrian expressions for months. He had learned to read their body language. During interrogations of captured prisoners, the Queen had not looked defeated or surprised when she fell. She had looked desperate and hopeful at the same time. Her glowing eyes had searched the battlefield until they found Jake's fighter, and then she had stared right at him. In that moment, before everything went dark, Jake had felt like she was trying to tell him something important. The other human pilots were already moving toward the disabled alien ships to look for survivors and salvage. Jake knew he should follow orders and return to the main fleet, but something made him stay close to the Queen's flagship. His instruments showed no life signs from the alien crew, but the ship's hull was still warm and some of its internal systems were still running on backup power. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of flying back to celebrate with the other humans, he aimed his fighter toward a docking port on the side of the Queen's ship. Jake's fighter attached to the Queen's flagship with a soft clang that echoed through both ships. He checked his oxygen levels and weapon charge before opening the airlock. The docking tube between his ship and the alien vessel was filled with a strange blue mist that smelled like flowers mixed with electricity. Jake had never been inside a living Zephyrian ship before, and every surface around him seemed to pulse with a slow heartbeat. The corridors of the flagship were much larger than human ship passages. Queen Vexthara was nearly 8 feet tall, and her crew needed room to move around. Bioluminescent strips along the walls provided dim light that grew brighter when Jake walked near them and faded when he moved away. The ship was reacting to his presence like a sleeping animal that sensed a stranger nearby. Jake followed the main corridor toward the bridge, where he had seen the Queen collapse. His boots made squelching sounds on the soft floor material, and he tried not to think about walking through the organs of a giant space creature. Emergency power kept the life support systems running, but most of the ship's advanced functions had shut down when Queen Vexthara lost consciousness. The bridge was a circular chamber with a high domed ceiling covered in what looked like nerve clusters. In the center stood the Queen's command throne, which was grown from the same crystalline material as her body. Queen Vexthara lay motionless on the throne with silver fluid leaking from cracks in her arms and face. Jake approached carefully with his weapon ready, but she did not move when he got close. He had expected the Queen to be dead, but his scanner showed faint life signs coming from her chest area. Her breathing was very slow and weak, like someone in a deep coma. The silver fluid that leaked from her wounds had a metallic smell, and it glowed faintly in the dim light. Jake knew that Zephyrian physiology was different from human biology, but he had never seen anything like this before. As Jake studied the Queen's injuries, he heard a whisper inside his head. The voice was female and speaking in broken English, mixed with alien words he did not recognize. At first he thought he was imagining things because of stress from the battle, but the voice got stronger and more clear. "Human warrior," the voice said. "You came back. Good. Listen carefully, because I do not have much time left." Jake looked around the bridge to see if someone else was talking, but he was alone with the unconscious Queen. The voice had to be coming from her somehow, even though her mouth was not moving. He had heard that powerful Zephyrians could speak directly into other minds, but he never expected it to happen to him. "Your Majesty," Jake said out loud, feeling foolish for talking to someone who appeared to be dying. "I don't understand what happened to you." "Poison," Queen Vexthara's mental voice replied. "My own council betrayed me. General Korthnax put something in my food that blocks my bioelectric abilities. Without my power, I cannot control the fleet, or even keep my own body working properly." Jake felt shocked by this revelation. He had assumed the Queen's collapse was caused by some kind of medical emergency or equipment failure. The idea that her own people had tried to kill her changed everything about the battle and the war itself. Why would your general want you? Dead, Jake asked. Because I was trying to make peace with your species, the Queen replied. Her mental voice was getting weaker and Jake had to concentrate to hear her words. For 6 months I have been working in secret to end this war. My people and your people could help each other instead of fighting. But General Korthnax believes that conquest is the only way. He thinks I have become soft and weak. Jake tried to process this information. Peace between humans and Zephyrians seemed impossible after years of brutal fighting. The aliens had destroyed human colonies and enslaved entire populations. They had shown no mercy to prisoners and no interest in negotiation. The idea that their queen had been trying to end the war in secret was hard to believe. How do I know? You're telling the truth, Jake asked. Queen Vexthara's eyes opened slowly and looked directly at him. Even though her power was fading, her gaze was still intense and frightening. Because I chose to fall during the battle when I knew you would. Be watching. I waited until your fighter was close enough for me to make mental contact. I have been studying human military records and I know you are different from other pilots. Different how? You ask questions instead of just following orders. You study our culture and language instead of just killing us. Your commanders think. You're too curious, but curiosity is exactly what I need right now. Jake felt confused and overwhelmed. Everything he thought he knew about the war was turning upside down. If the Queen was telling the truth, then humans and Zephyrians had been tricked into fighting each other by a group of alien military leaders who wanted to stay in power. What do you want me to do? Jake asked. My loyal guards are hiding in the lower sections of this ship, Queen Vexthara said. Find them and help them escape. They have information about where General Korthnax is keeping the antidote for this poison. Without that antidote, I will die within a few hours, and the general will take control of the entire empire. Why should I care if you die? You're my enemy, because if I die, the war will never end. General Korthnax will use my death to rally the empire for a final attack on Earth itself. Billions of humans will die, and my people will be destroyed in the fighting. Nobody wins except the general and his supporters. Jake realized that saving Queen Vexthara might be the only way to save both species from total destruction. But helping her would mean disobeying direct orders from his human commanders. It would mean risking his career and possibly his life to trust an alien leader who had been his enemy for years. Where are these loyal guards? Jake asked. Deck 7 near the Organic Processing Center? Look for Dr. Yolandra. She is my chief scientist and she knows everything about the poison that is killing me. But be careful. Some of my crew are still loyal to General Korthnax and they will try to stop you. Jake checked his weapon and started moving toward the corridor that led to the lower decks. As he walked away from the throne, he heard Queen Vexthara's mental voice one more time. Human warrior Jake Morrison. I know your name because I have been watching you fight. You have honor even toward enemies. That honor may be the only thing that can save both our peoples. Jake wondered how she knew his name, but there was no time to ask more questions. He had to find Dr. Yolandra and the other loyal Zephyrians before Queen Vexthara died and took all hope for peace with her. Jake made his way through the twisted corridors of the ship's lower levels. The organic walls here were darker and more primitive looking than the elegant bridge area. Strange growths hung from the ceiling like fruit, and the air had a thick, humid quality that made breathing difficult. His scanner showed multiple life signs ahead, but he could not tell if they were friendly or hostile. The organic processing center turned out to be a large chamber, filled with pools of glowing liquid and strange machinery that looked more like giant insects than human technology. Jake heard voices speaking in the Zephyrian language, and he crept closer to listen. His translation device could only pick up scattered words, but the tone sounded urgent and frightened. 3 Zephyrians were huddled around a damaged communication console trying to repair it. They were smaller than Queen Vexthara, and their crystalline skin had a greenish tint instead of blue. When they noticed Jake approaching, they grabbed weapons that looked like living creatures, with sharp teeth, and pointed them in his direction. Wait, Jake said, holding up his hands to show he was not attacking. I'm looking for Dr. Yolandra. Queen Vexthara sent me to find you. The largest of the three aliens stepped forward and spoke in heavily accented English. I am Dr. Yolandra. How? Do we know you are not here to capture us for General Korthnax? Because your queen is dying, and I'm the only human who knows the truth about what happened to her, Jake replied. She told me about the poison and the conspiracy against her. Dr. Yolandra exchanged looks with her companions and then gestured. For Jake to come closer, show us your hands, she said. When Jake held out his palms, she touched them with her own fingers, and suddenly, Jake felt a strange, tingling sensation in his mind. Zephyrians can sense deception through skin contact, Dr. Yolandra explained. You are telling the truth about speaking with our queen, but helping you could mean death for all of us. Staying here definitely means death, Jake pointed out. This ship is losing power, and my people will board it soon. If they find you, they'll either kill you or take you prisoner. Dr. Yolandra made a decision. Very well, human Jake Morrison. We will trust you because our queen trusted you first. But you must understand what you are getting involved with. This conspiracy goes much deeper than just General Korthnax wanting power. She led Jake and the other two Zephyrians to a hidden section behind the organic processors where they had set up a temporary laboratory. Charts and data screens showed complex molecular structures and biological processes that Jake could not understand. But Dr. Yolandra began explaining things in simple terms. The poison that is killing Queen Vexthara is not from our world, she said. General Korthnax obtained it from an alien species called the Vrex who live beyond the edge of known space. The Vrex are parasites who consume other civilizations from within by turning their leaders against each other. Jake felt a chill as he realized the implications. You're saying the Vrex are manipulating your general to destroy both our species? Exactly. The Vrex promised General Korthnax that he could rule the galaxy if he helped them eliminate both humans and loyal Zephyrians. They want us to fight each other until we are too weak to resist when their main invasion force arrives. One of the other scientists activated a holographic display that showed star charts of the local region. Red markers indicated Vrex Scout, ships that had been detected near human and Zephyrian territories over the past year. The pattern showed a systematic infiltration designed to gather intelligence and plant agents among both species. How long do we have before the Queen dies? Jake asked. Perhaps 4 hours with the medical equipment we have here, Dr. Yolandra replied. But we cannot synthesize an antidote without access to rare elements that are only found in the cores of our bioships. The nearest source would be General Korthnax's flagship, but it is heavily guarded and surrounded by ships loyal to him. Jake studied the star charts and began forming a plan. What if we could get a message to my fleet? Some of my commanders might listen if they understood the real threat. General Korthnax has been monitoring all communications, Dr. Yolandra said. Any transmission from this ship would be detected and jammed before it reached your people. We need a different approach. Then we extract the Queen and take her somewhere safe while we figure out how to cure her. Moving her in her current condition would kill her faster than the poison. She must remain connected to her ship's biosystems or her body will shut down completely. Jake realized they were trapped. Queen Vexthara could not be moved, and they could not get help from the human fleet without exposing themselves to General Korthnax. The only solution was to somehow obtain the antidote from the General's flagship, but that seemed impossible with just 4 people. Dr. Yolandra seemed to read his thoughts. There is one possibility, she said. Our Queen showed you her memories of the peace negotiations. She can also show you something else that might help convince your people to trust us. What do you mean? Ancient records that prove humans and Zephyrians are connected in ways that neither species remembers. Long ago, before either of our civilizations reached the stars, there was contact between our peoples. The records speak of humans as bridge builders, who can unite different species against common threats. Jake felt skeptical. That sounds like mythology, not historical fact. Perhaps. But the Vrex believe it is true, and that is why they are so determined to prevent cooperation between our species. They fear what we might accomplish if we work together instead of fighting. Dr. Yolandra activated another device that looked like a crystalline flower. When Jake touched it, he suddenly found himself seeing images that felt like ancient memories. He saw humans and Zephyrians working side by side to build great cities among the stars. He saw combined fleets defending peaceful worlds against dark creatures that came from the void. Between galaxies, the visions were brief, but they felt absolutely real. Jake understood that whether the records were true history or prophecy did not matter. What mattered was that they represented a possible future where both species could survive and thrive. "We need to get back to Queen Vextara," Jake said. "If she can share these memories with me, then maybe I can find a way to share them with others." As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Jake heard new sounds coming from the upper decks. Heavy footsteps and mechanical noises that did not belong to the organic ship. Human boarding parties had arrived, and they were searching the vessel for survivors and intelligence. "We have to move fast," Jake said. "In about 10 minutes, this place will be crawling with Earth defense Corps soldiers, and they won't bother asking questions before they start shooting." Dr. Yolandra and her companions gathered essential equipment and data storage devices. They would have to abandon most of their research, but the most important information was stored in portable units that could be carried by hand. Jake led them through maintenance passages that avoided the main corridors where human search teams would be operating. They could hear voices and equipment sounds getting closer as more soldiers boarded the ship. Jake reached the bridge just as human soldiers were cutting through the main entrance. He quickly helped Dr. Yolandra and her team hide behind organic support structures while he approached Queen Vexthara's throne. The queen was barely conscious, but her eyes focused on him when he got close. "My people are here," Jake whispered. "We have to get you out of here." "No time," Queen Vexthara replied through their mental link. "Take what you need from my memories now before it is too late." Jake felt the queen's mind touch his, and suddenly he was flooded with information. He saw detailed star charts showing Vrex staging areas beyond the galaxy's edge. He witnessed secret meetings where General Korthnax received orders from alien handlers who promised him power in exchange for betraying his own species. Most importantly, he learned the exact location of the antidote that could save the queen's life. The antidote was being held in a secure laboratory aboard General Korthnax's command ship, which was currently 3 star systems away gathering reinforcements for a massive counterattack against humanity. The general planned to use Queen Vexthara's apparent death as justification for total war against Earth and its colonies. "I understand," Jake said. "But how do I convince my commanders to help you instead of taking you prisoner?" "Show them what I have shown you," the queen replied. "The ancient memories and the proof of Rex infiltration. Some humans will listen if they understand the true threat." Jake heard the cutting sounds getting louder as human soldiers worked through the bridge door. In a few minutes, they would break through and find Queen Vexthara along with Dr. Yolandra and her team. Jake had to make a choice between following orders and doing what he believed was right. He activated his emergency communication beacon and sent a coded message to Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park, who was his closest friend in the fleet. The message simply said, "Trust me and come to the Queen's Bridge alone. Bring medical supplies and tell no one." Lisa had served with Jake for 3 years, and she knew he would not ask for help unless it was extremely important. 20 minutes. Later, she arrived at the bridge entrance just as the other soldiers finished cutting through the door. "Stand down," Lisa ordered the soldiers. "Captain Morrison has requested a private briefing with the enemy commander before we proceed with standard interrogation protocols." The soldiers reluctantly backed away from the entrance. Lisa entered the bridge and immediately saw Queen Vexthara lying motionless on her throne. Her hand moved to her weapon, but Jake stepped between them. "She's not a threat right now," Jake said. "Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to tell you will sound crazy, but it's all true." Jake quickly explained everything he had learned about the conspiracy and the Vrex infiltration. Lisa listened with growing amazement as he described the Queen's secret peace efforts and General Korthnax's betrayal. When Jake finished talking, Lisa stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Jake, you're talking about treason," Lisa said. Even if everything you're saying is true, we can't just ignore our orders and start helping enemy aliens. Look at her, Jake said, pointing to Queen Vexthara. Does she look like someone who just lost a battle? She's been poisoned by her own people because she wanted to end this war. Lisa approached the throne carefully and studied the queen's condition. As a trained medic, she could see that Queen Vexthara's injuries were not caused by weapons or combat damage. The silver fluid leaking from her wounds and the way her bioelectric systems were failing suggested some kind of internal malfunction or toxic reaction. Dr. Yelandra emerged from her hiding place and began speaking in careful English. Your friend speaks truth, human Lisa Park. Our queen dies because she trusted wrong people in her own government. If you help us save her, maybe both our species can survive what is coming. Lisa looked back and forth between Jake and the alien scientist. Everything about the situation violated her training and her orders, but she had learned to trust Jake's judgment over the years. If he believed these aliens were telling the truth, then maybe she should listen. What do you need from me, Lisa? Asked. Medical supplies to keep the queen stable and help getting Dr. Yelandra off this ship without being captured, Jake replied. We need to find a way to reach General Korthnak's flagship and get the antidote. That's impossible. His ship is surrounded by the entire Zephyrian fleet, and it's 3 jumps away from here. Dr. Yelandra activated a small device that projected holographic images, showing the molecular structure of the poison and its antidote. The cure requires rare bioelectric elements that are grown in the cores of our command ships. But we can synthesize a temporary treatment using medical supplies from your fleet combined with organic material from this vessel. Lisa studied the holographic formulas and realized that the alien science was far more advanced than human medicine. If Dr. Yelandra was right, they might be able to keep Queen Vexthara alive long enough to find a permanent cure. I can get the medical supplies, Lisa said, but helping you escape will be much harder. Admiral Sullivan has ordered a complete lockdown of this ship until all alien technology can be studied. Jake had an idea. What if we don't try to escape? What if we bring help here instead? What do you mean? My fighter is still docked to this ship. If I can get back to it, I can send a message to someone who might be willing to listen to the truth. Jake was thinking about Captain Ben Hayes, who commanded one of the escort cruisers in their fleet. Ben had always been skeptical about the war, and he had often questioned orders that seemed unnecessarily brutal. If anyone might be willing to consider the possibility of peace, it would be Ben. Lisa agreed to create a distraction that would allow Jake to reach his fighter while she helped. Dr. Yelandra began synthesizing the temporary antidote. The plan was risky because they were essentially committing mutiny against their own commanders, but the alternative was watching both species destroy each other while the real enemy prepared to invade. Jake made his way back through the ship's corridors, avoiding human search teams that were cataloging alien technology. He reached his fighter and immediately began composing a detailed message to Captain Hayes that included everything he had learned about the conspiracy. The message also contained copies of the memory files that Queen Vexthara had shared with him, showing proof of Rex infiltration and evidence of the general's betrayal. Jake knew that transmitting classified information to another ship without authorization was a court-martial offense, but he was past the point of worrying about regulations. As Jake prepared to send the message, he heard new alarm signals coming from the human fleet. Long-range sensors had detected a large force of Zephyrian ships approaching their position. General Korthnak was arriving ahead of schedule, and he was bringing enough firepower to destroy the entire human fleet. Jake realized that time had run out. In less than 6 hours, General Korthnak would arrive and find Queen Vexthara either dead or captured by humans. Either situation would give him the excuse he needed to order a final assault on Earth itself. The message to Captain Hayes would have to wait. Jake had to find a way to get the antidote from the general's flagship before the enemy fleet arrived, or billions of people on both sides would die in the coming battle. Jake sent his message to Captain Hayes and then returned to the bridge where Lisa and Dr. Yelandra were working frantically to keep Queen Vexthara alive. The temporary treatment had stabilized her condition, but she was still too weak to use her bioelectric powers. They had maybe 12 hours before the poison would overcome the makeshift antidote. Captain Hayes responded to Jake's message within an hour. His reply was brief but encouraging. Jake, I've reviewed your data and it matches some suspicious activity we've been tracking for months. Meet me at coordinates 77 Alpha in 1 hour. Come alone and bring proof. Jake knew this might be his only chance to convince someone in authority that the real enemy was not the Zephyrians, but the Vrex who had been manipulating both sides. He gathered the memory crystals that contained Queen Vexthara's evidence and prepared to leave the flagship. If this doesn't work, we're all dead, Lisa said as she helped him prepare for the meeting. If we don't try, we're all dead anyway, Jake replied. General Korthnax will be here soon, and once he takes control of the Empire, there won't be any chance for peace. Jake flew his fighter to the meeting coordinates where Captain Hayes was waiting in a small patrol ship. The two men had known each other for years, and Hayes had always respected Jake's judgment, even when it conflicted with official policy. Show me what you've got, Hayes said as soon as Jake came aboard his ship. Jake activated the memory crystals and shared everything Queen Vexthara had shown him. Hayes watched in amazement as the evidence of Vrex infiltration played out in holographic detail. The ancient records of human-Zephyrian cooperation were harder to believe, but the scientific data about the conspiracy was undeniable. This is incredible, Hayes said. If this is true, then we've been fighting the wrong enemy for 3 years? It's true, Jake confirmed. The question is, what do we do about it? Hayes was quiet for several minutes as he studied the data. Finally, he made a decision that would change the course of the war. We need to get Admiral Sullivan to see this evidence. But first we need to make sure Queen Vexthara stays alive long enough to confirm it. The two captains returned to the fleet where Hayes used his authority to arrange a private meeting with Admiral Sullivan. Jake was nervous about presenting evidence of treason to the fleet commander, but Hayes convinced him that Sullivan was practical enough to listen to facts. Even when they contradicted her orders, Admiral Sullivan reviewed the evidence in her private quarters while Jake and Hayes waited outside. After 2 hours, she called them back in, and her expression was grim. If this information is accurate, then we've all been played for fools, Sullivan said. But I need more than alien memories and ancient legends to justify changing our entire strategy. What would convince you? Jake asked. Proof that General Korthnax is really working with these Vrex creatures. If we can intercept communications between them or detect Vrex ships in this system, then I'll consider the possibility that we're fighting the wrong war. As if summoned by her words, the fleet's long-range sensors suddenly detected multiple energy signatures approaching from the edge of the system. General Korthnax was arriving with his reinforcements, but the sensor readings showed something unexpected. Admiral, the communications officer reported, we're detecting ship designs that don't match any known Zephyrian or human technology, mixed in with the enemy fleet. Admiral Sullivan studied the tactical display and saw strange vessels that looked like crystalline spiders moving alongside General Korthnax's forces. The ships were clearly alien, but they were not Zephyrian in design. Those must be Vrex ships, Jake said. Queen Vexthara warned us they would reveal themselves once they thought victory was certain. Admiral Sullivan made a command decision. All ships prepare for defensive positions, but do not fire unless fired upon. Open a channel to the enemy fleet. When the communication link was established, General Korthnax appeared on the main screen. He was larger than Queen Vexthara, and his crystalline skin had a reddish tint that suggested anger or aggression. Behind him, Jake could see creatures that were definitely not Zephyrian standing at control stations. Admiral Sullivan, General Korthnax said in accented English, I have come to retrieve our queen and punish the humans who attacked her. Your queen is safe, Admiral Sullivan replied. But she's been poisoned by someone close to her. We're trying to save her life. Lies. You humans killed her with your weapons, and now you try to claim innocence. Jake stepped forward into view of the camera. General, your queen is alive, and she told me about the Vrex. She knows you betrayed her because she wanted peace. General. Korthnax's expression changed from anger to fear when he saw Jake. Impossible. The Queen was unconscious when her ship was captured. She spoke to me telepathically and shared her memories. I know about the poison, and I know about your deal with the Vrex. At that moment, one of the spider-like ships moved closer to the General's flagship, and Jake could see non-Zephyrian figures on the bridge. The Vrex had revealed themselves too early because they thought the battle was already won. Admiral Sullivan broadcast the conversation to all ships in both fleets. Human and Zephyrian crews could hear the evidence of conspiracy and betrayal being revealed in real time. Many of the alien ships began to slow down and separate from General Korthnak's formation as their commanders realized they had been deceived. General Korthnak's, Admiral Sullivan said, I'm offering you one chance to surrender and help us fight the real enemy. The Vrex have been using you to weaken both our species. General Korthnax looked around his bridge and saw that half his crew was no longer following his orders. Some of the Zephyrian captains were openly refusing to attack the human fleet. The conspiracy was falling apart.